Do you ever feel like nothing works when your child is melting down and you're trying to get them to calm down? Like maybe you told them they have to get off of their device and they knew they were going to have to get off of their device, but you remind them and they have a really big reaction. And you try all the things to help them calm down. Maybe you use reasoning, reminding them, hey, I'd set a timer. I told you were going to have to get off of your device. Or maybe you threaten punishment. You say, if you don't calm down now and stop reacting like that, I'm going to take away your device for 2 days. Maybe you even stay calm yourself, but none of that ends. They're yelling or they're crying, or maybe even they're shutting down and saying, I'm the worst child in the world. No matter what you try, nothing seems to work. So recently I did another video on kids with ADHD who have big emotions. And what I really emphasized in that video is that when this happens, when you see these big reactions, whether they're loud and your child is lashing out, or they're quiet and your child is being mean to themselves, in that moment, they're not being a problem, they're having a problem. That's because they are missing a specific skill, the skill to regulate themselves when their feelings get really, really big. So if you want to diffuse these situations more easily, more quickly, you have to know what to do about the fact that they are missing this skill. And you really need to know about something that I call the yuck curve. Having your child do what I call traveling the yuck curve, and I'll tell you exactly what I mean in just a moment. This will help you diffuse situations so much more quickly and so much more easily. So first, let me tell you what I mean by the yuck curve. So yuck is a blanket term I use to describe any type of discomfort. So in the case of your child having to get off of their device, their yuck is that they're uncomfortable because they wanted to keep playing or doing what they were doing and they had to stop. That creates this uncomfortable feeling, or what I call yuck. Now, the yuck curve describes what happens over time when someone is in yuck. So you can imagine a rainbow-shaped curve where when someone's in yuck, their yuck and uncomfortable feelings get bigger and bigger. They reach a peak and eventually they come down. Now, what's important to know is that when someone is actually on the yuck curve, when they're in this place of yuck, their brain has sensed this yuck or discomfort as a threat. So their fight or flight response has kicked in. And when their fight or flight response kicks in, one of the first things it does is it shuts off access to the part of the brain that helps them act mature and responsible. So when someone is in yuck, they are not going to act mature or responsible. When someone's on that yuck curve, you're going to see negative behaviors, moods, and attitudes. And they're more positive behaviors, moods, and attitudes where they're calming down, where they're being nicer, where they're being more calm. That doesn't happen until they do what I call traveling the curve. After your child lets out all this yuck and you see all that behavior end, you've probably noticed that their behavior starts to return to normal. That's a sign that they have traveled the curve. So the question obviously becomes, if we want to diffuse these situations more easily, how do we help them travel the curve more quickly and more easily? Now, I'm going to start by saying that what we usually do keeps them stuck in yuck or on the yuck curve even longer. Because remember, when they're in yuck, they're in fight or flight. So their brain is scanning the environment to say, is it safe? Can I shut off this fight or flight response, get out of yuck and become calmer? But if we are creating a threat, if we are yelling at them, using reasoning, using logic, telling them all the things that are going to happen if they don't calm down, all that does is it creates more of a threat. That increases the height of the yuck curve and it increases the duration of the yuck curve. So when we are doing all the things we're doing to try to get them to stop, we're actually creating more of a threat. Their brain is sensing that as a problem and they're staying more dysregulated. Ultimately, to get someone to come off the other side or travel the yuck curve, we have to help them feel safe. So how do we help them feel safe? We actually have to focus on our own energy. We help them feel safe when we are both confident and connected. When we are confident that we can handle this emotion, but we're also connected in that we care about what they're going through, their brain senses safety and they regulate more quickly. They travel the yuck curve more quickly. They return to calmer behavior. So what's really important to take away from all of this is if you are creating what your child perceives to be a threat, and usually they do perceive what we're trying to do as a threat, it is going to take a lot longer to diffuse that situation. When you are more calm and when you are more connected, they are going to diffuse more quickly. Now, before you think, oh, great, this is one more thing that I, as a parent, have to do to make this better, I can absolutely understand why you'd think that, but I'm going to tell you the way I think about this. Instead of thinking, oh, great, this is another thing I have to do, I think, oh, thank goodness, there's something about this that is in my control. Because very honestly, I raise kids with big emotions and I often feel out of control. But when we recognize that our energy actually diffuses the situation better, that means we have more control over the situation not less. And if you're anything like me, you also want a little bit more control over the situation. So you want to think, how can I make my child feel more safe? Now, I want to wrap up this video by saying letting your child travel the curve is not the same as being permissive. Focusing on your own confidence and connection with your child when they're traveling the curve is not the same as letting them get away with whatever they're doing in that moment. We absolutely need to talk to our kids outside of the moment and teach them strategies to learn to regulate themselves more effectively. We just can't do it in that moment. Now, in the next video, I'm going to talk about how we help our kids become more resilient, because the rest of the world is not going to let them travel the curve, but how us doing that when they are young actually sets them up to be able to handle the fact that people are not going to let them travel the curve, that people are not going to coddle them, and people are not going to be nice to them. So meet me in the next video so I can tell you more about that. In the meantime, I'd love to hear from you. Below this video, tell me, in what situation do you think it would be hardest to let them travel the curve? So post below and then meet me in the next video.